Percy cute. Wait till he's 16 and doesn't think you know anything.
If he's anything like when, because my husband used to take him when I was traveling, he would see my husband and run up to the front. That doesn't happen. Okay, we're ready? Okay. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the seminar today, View from the Top. My name is Angela Anderson, and I'm Director of Customer Outreach for the Innovation Center for U.S. Dairy, and I'll be the moderator for the panel today. Today's World Dairy Expo seminar is sponsored by the Innovation Center for U.S. Dairy through the National Dairy Checkoff. 2018 marks the 10-year anniversary of the Innovation Center and the Dairy Sustainability Alliance, forums that bring together the collective power of the dairy community to ensure the industry is economically viable, socially responsible from farm to table. Representing the entire supply chain from farmers, cooperatives, food companies, suppliers, grocers, and other organizations, we focus on priorities that are pre-competitive in nature, working to bring together and strengthen the opportunities for meaningful change. From food safety, animal care, nutrition, and the environment, the Innovation Center is committed to continuous improvement through a framework of shared best practices and accountability. Led by 29 chairmen and CEOs serving on the board of directors, we commit to act as stewards and champion the work of the Innovation Center, integrating principles into practices and supporting a unified communications approach. Our leaders recognize that now's the time for the dairy community to be more unified, more open, and more proactively building trust with consumers by engaging in consumer transparency and improvement by telling our stories. One of the ways that we work on building that transparency today is working to engage food chain customers in the dairy social responsibility story. Many of our customers not only deal with buying dairy, but also are working to incorporate social responsibility in doing what's right within their food and retail space. From sharing insights from the National Dairy Farm Program to having frank conversations about emerging issues in today's environment, we're working to build conversations and materials that go beyond just the promotion of the product. At the end of the day, it's about building trust and building transparency and confidence in the dairy community and about building on our social responsibility. Which brings us here today with our panelists. Joining me on stage is Mike Brown, Director of the Dairy Supply Chain for the Kroger Company, and Sarah Hendren, Nutrition and Quality Assurance Manager for Culver Franchising System. Both bring numerous years of experience from both the food service, retailer, and food processing realm, and very integral with working in their companies to understand and help share different sourcing policies. Thank you both for joining us here today. And would you take a few minutes just to do a little introduction of yourselves?
Okay, Mike Brown. I see a lot of people I know, even another, at least one fellow Hokie, which I'm very delighted to see here. Western New York, raised on a small farm, went to school at Virginia Tech, dairy science, and came here to judge. And if it hadn't been for a class of Ayrshires, I'd have done a lot better. But, and we had some of those at home too, so I have no excuse. But anyway, in recent years, I spent 10 years at National Jersey working on milk component pricing, the 1995 Farm Bill. And the change to component pricing in most federal orders was a lot of hard work on my part and my friends at USDA and across the industry. Since then, I worked for Dairy Gold, the cooperative, Glanbia Foods, Inc., which is a large cheese company based in Ireland, but with large plants in Idaho and New Mexico. And then the last 3 years, I worked for the Kroger Company as Director of Dairy Supply Chain. I lead a team of, there's 5 of us that supply all the milk and dairy ingredients for our 20 dairy plants. We'll talk about that a little more in a minute, as well as we source products that we don't make that are for the Kroger brands of dairy products. So, but just so you all know, I used to live in Wisconsin, but I kept my house here. I'm retiring back here. I love it here. So thanks. Yeah, it's a great place to be.
Great. It's really hard to follow this guy. Holy moly, he's got a couple more years of experience on me here.
That means I'm older.
Hi guys, I'm Sarah Hendren. I'm the Nutrition and Quality Assurance Manager for Culver's. I have been with Culver's for about 5.5 years now. My responsibilities, I wear a couple different hats in addition to leading nutrition and, for example, like putting calories on the menu board, as well as quality assurance. So making sure that regardless of where our guests are dining, whether you're dining here with us in Madison, Wisconsin, or you're in Florida or Arizona, that your experience is very similar and that our menu items look alike. But then another hat I wear is also helping make sure that the claims and verification that we're using are trustworthy and that we have the documentation to support that from a supply chain piece. So very excited to be here today. I know there is a lot going on at the World Dairy Expo. There are a lot of different places you could be at this very moment. So thank you for being here with us on this panel. So really looking forward to getting started here.
Great, thank you, Sarah. And I've both worked with Mike and Sarah this past year in a variety of capacities. So you do really have some of the best and brightest when it comes to why are we doing what we're doing here in maybe customer dialogue. So very much look forward to some of their conversations today and hopefully answering some of your questions. But I'm going to turn this over to Mike to talk a little bit about Kroger.
Okay, a few slides on Kroger. Kroger is the second largest grocery chain in the United States and the fourth largest merchandiser in the world. I think you all know who's number one, but we don't talk about them a whole lot. Give you some idea of our locations. We have about 2,800 stores in 35 states. I'm very proud because 2 weeks after I moved from Kenosha to Cincinnati, Kroger's merged with the Roundy's company in Wisconsin. So we picked up Mariano's and Pick and Save and stores in that. So we have that nice orange section now. And I like the orange. It looks very cheesy for Wisconsin. It's a good choice. But we're pretty much across the country. The company started in 1883 in Cincinnati, Ohio. And Barney Kroger thought he could provide better meats and buy better bread if he had his own bakery and his butcher shops. And that's where the manufacturing of Kroger started. We'll talk about more of that in a minute. But we're pretty much across the country. The Northeast is the one area we're really not, although we do own an ice cream company in Lancaster, Pennsylvania that services a lot of the Northeast. Sustainability, I threw this slide in because a lot of what we're doing in dairy I think fits in this initiative, and we're very proud of what our dairy co-ops and their members are doing in the areas of sustainability. But we started an initiative last fall, 17, it's called Zero Hunger, Zero Waste. And the whole idea of that is to limit the amount of landfill waste and improve energy efficiency in our stores. At the same time, do more to promote healthy food for all, and that includes we work nationally with a lot of food shelters in all of our divisions, and I'll talk a little bit in a minute, something we're doing in dairy. But those are important to us, and we view our partnerships with agriculture, and not just animal agriculture, but also crops, also aquaculture, which is important, that we work to ensure our customers that our producers are doing a great job, and we really believe that they are. So we run 35 plants. We would be a Fortune 500 company if Kroger only ran processing plants. And 20 of those plants are dairy, 17 process fluid milk, 8 culture, 7 make ice cream, and then we have 2 plants that what you call cut and wraps, we package and process cheese. Our one Upper Midwest plant, well, truly is Rochester Cheese, but Roundy's commissary is also in Kenosha. It's 5 miles from my house. I should have negotiated to be able to live there, but it didn't work. So we're all over the country with our dairies, and again, a lot of them were purchased when we bought divisions of stores. We merged with other divisions. The dairies came with them. The United States is kind of unique in the way that grocery stores own fluid processing plants. That's not true in a lot of the world, but it is true here in the United States. So what do we make? We make lots of things. As you can see, the majority of our plants process fluid milk, at least as part of their business. Some of it's their entire business. And when I say fluid, I mean what we call HTST, which is high temperature short time. It's the gallons of plastic milk and the half gallons of milk. We have a couple specialty plants. We have just a few years old, a plant in Denver that does aseptic packaging, and we actually package cream from that plant for the entire country, as well as a plant in Hutchinson, Kansas, which does extended shelf life, half gallons of milk, both organic, and we also have a high protein milk called Carb Master that we process there. Cultured is, Kroger has this name for culture, and they don't call it cultured products, they call it surplus. Like if you don't put it in a bottle and you have some left over, you're going to make cottage cheese, it doesn't matter. So I'm working on them to change it to cultured products. That's mostly cottage cheese and sour cream, and a lot of yogurt. We make a lot of yogurt. Ice cream, again, we have lots of plants to do that, and we make both novelties as well as high-fat, low-fat, and some other ice creams. And then we have our 2 plants that package cheese, and we buy a lot of cheese from around the country. The majority, just so you know, from the upper Midwest. So we're big fans of upper Midwest cheese. It's very, very good quality. If there's someone here from California, I apologize. We buy that too, but we buy a lot of upper Midwest cheese. So what about dairy at Kroger? It's our #1 category if you look at the broad category. And it's by far the largest general category in the store, and of course we're very proud of that, and our brands are very predominant. Up to 90% in certain categories is Kroger brand products. Fluid milk's the #2 overall category. Cheese is 3 and growing. Ice cream is 10, yogurt's 11, and cottage cheese and sour cream are 28. So they're all very, very important, but as you can see, just if you look at how milk's used in the United States, well, fluid milk and cheese are our biggest categories, and we really focus on quality, and we think that's one of the reasons we continue to have good growth. Fluid milk's a difficult category for us all. If you look at the solids that are used, I would say that our consumers are buying as much milk solids as they ever did, but they're not drinking it. They're cutting it with a knife and eating it with a fork in a lot of cases. But one of the things that we are doing, this actually started in around 2007. I was actually working for Dairy Gold selling milk to Kroger when this happened at their dairy in Portland, is promise 10 days freshness, which means if you go in a Kroger store, you will have, and Roundy's isn't on this program yet, but for all the rest of our divisions, if you go in a Kroger store, you will never see milk that doesn't have less than 10 days of shelf life left. How do you do that? Well, first of all, you make sure you buy quality milk. Our average somatic cell count's below 200,000. Our co-ops and their members do a fantastic job, and we work with 8 different cooperatives in different parts of the country supplying us milk. And we keep it cycled fast enough so that at day 10, if it's still there, it either ends up working in food service or in the deli. It's perfectly good milk. Or if we have extra, we donate it to food banks. Now, we're pretty efficient, so there's not a lot of milk left to donate, but the whole idea is that consumer takes that milk and goes home, and with 10 days of shelf life left, they can even abuse it a little bit, and it's still going to be good milk. Because there's one thing I can tell you about milk. If you have a customer that buys gallons of milk, their average cost of their shopping basket, all the groceries, is like 30% higher than those who don't have a gallon of milk in. So it's important. The last thing you want to do is lose somebody that comes in your store twice a week to buy milk because they got bad milk, so they go to your competitor, and then they buy their vegetables, and they buy their laundry detergent, all those other things. So milk is real key to customer loyalty at Kroger. So it's very, very important to us, and we're very proud of our keeping quality of our milk, and we work hard to do it. And I think another thing that's important, and I could talk on Kroger Dairy all day because I love what I do, but we're going to talk just in the very end. I think it's real important how ardent supporters we are of the farm program. And there's a couple reasons. But we started out getting our raw milk supplies into our plants farm certified. We got that done. And then we said, well, we can do better. So we moved on to, see somebody smiling back there. We moved on to, well, there's no reason the cheese and the dry milk and the cream and the butterfat we buy for our bakeries can also be farm certified. So anything that's in a Kroger brand comes from milk that was sourced from a farm that's involved in the farm program. Whether it's a co-op we work with directly or products we buy from either co-ops or other manufacturers. That's become a lot easier because the program is so broadly supported. We feel very strongly it's a program we appreciate, the Innovation Center's role, working with the farm folks and working with National Milk, that it's a collaborative effort as we go through changes. We're in version 3, headed to 4, to make sure that it's workable, it's based on science, and I'm a big believer in that. I think any of us anymore, we see the garbage, a lot of the stuff on the internet, you get very frustrated. We're very excited about that. So, and we'll talk a lot more about this, but it's something that we find has been a great for us, not only as a communication tool with our customers, but I think it's a way that we can show that what we're doing is part of our entire sustainability effort to support the broader dairy industry. Because I work for a company that sells everything, but I think those of you know me, this is where my heart is in dairy. So that's a little bit about Kroger. And so dairy is very important to us.
We appreciate that.
Yeah.
Sarah, awesome. Tell a little bit about
I'm gonna
Culver's.
grab that. Perfect. I brought a couple notes with me just to make sure I don't forget anything. All right. So I know we are in Madison, Wisconsin, which is pretty much Culver land here, but being the World Dairy Expo, I figure there may be some people in the room who do not know who Culver's is. So I thought I'd start with giving a little background and history of Culver's. So Culver's is based in Wisconsin in a small town called Sauk City. So if you were to drive north for about 45 minutes northwest, you guys would end up in the small town of Sauk City and get a view of the beautiful Wisconsin River. We have over 650 restaurants in 24 states, which for many of you in the room who remember when Culver's was first starting, this is a really big win. We've really come a long way. We are largely concentrated in the upper Midwest, but we are as far west as like Utah and Arizona, and we're as far east as North Carolina and South Carolina. Our menu, we are known for butter burgers and delicious, creamy, fresh frozen custard. Who has had the chance to try our custard before? Yes, good. I see a lot of nodding heads. Good stuff, right? But in addition to burgers and custard, we also have a really wide variety on our menu. We offer chicken and fish and pork, and we even offer salads. Our mission statement is every guest who chooses Culver's leaves happy, and we really truly believe that. We're grounded in that small community, and we want our guests every single time they visit our restaurant to really remember that wonderful family dining experience. Our co-founder Craig Culver always says, we're in the people business, but we just happen to serve food too. And while that's totally true, we really, really care about where our food comes from. And we work really hard with our suppliers to be a part of the ag industry. And as we have continued to grow over the years, so have our suppliers. And we really want to make sure that we're a part of those long-term solutions in making sure we have a food supply for our growing population. I had a little video in here, but unfortunately it wasn't working, so I'm going to jump to this consumer perceptions slide. We know that a lot of misinformation exists about food production and animal care, and it's why we're partly here today on this panel, and it's why you guys are in the room here. Our messaging of quality ingredients and being grounded in family and our community has really resonated with our guests, and we've built a lot of trust with our guests, and that messaging is very, very important to us. And as our guests are demanding more in transparency and knowing where their food comes from and how animals are raised, we want to continue making sure that we share that messaging and that great story we do have to share with our guests. I want to jump to the Thank You Farmers Project. Culver's has 3 arms of charitable giving. One of them is the Thank You Farmers Project, which started in 2013. The Thank You Farmers Project is more than just showing appreciation for the hard work of today's farmers, but it's also about ensuring that our nation has enough food supply to continue feeding our growing population for years to come. And we do this by supporting agriculture education efforts that encourage smart farming. These advancements that are going to ensure that we can produce more food with the same or even less resources than we currently have today. And when we think about that, it's our young generation, our young minds, those leaders in FFA who are really going to play a critical role in finding those new and innovative solutions. And since the creation of the Thank You Farmers Project in 2013, Culver's and our guests have helped to make a difference by donating nearly $2 million to agriculture education programs like FFA at the national, the state, and the local level. The Thank You Farmers Project also allows us to really take a deeper dive into agriculture and to tell our story. One example, just briefly, is something called #Farming Fridays that we've been doing for a couple years now. And it's a social media series where we invite members of our ag community to tell their story to Culver's followers. And it's been a really great way to help our guests connect a little bit more to the people who enjoy our food every day and who produce the food that we all rely on. So I'm really excited to get into these panel questions. It's just a little bit about Culver's and our Thank You Farmers project, because this means a lot to us in the ag community. So I'll turn it back over to Angela.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Culver's. My husband's actually an ag teacher, and our local Culver's has significantly helped him get off the ground moving with his ag program.
Wonderful.
So
we love to hear that.
We appreciate it. But it's not always a super friendly atmosphere out there. There's a lot of questions that get asked. Let's talk about the changing sourcing guidelines that have been out there for customers, because there's been a shift. In the last few years, there seems to be more requirements from customers to farmers about how they need to farm or the product that they are, I would say, creating, growing. How does your company go about making some of these sourcing decisions, and what goes into that, and what's that thought process, and who's really part of that in that decision making?
Well, it's interesting because we find in the United States, where of course most of our food comes from, seafood is probably the biggest exception to that, that a lot of the trade associations, certainly in the case of Dairy, National Milk and Innovation Center, do good work, and we feel like we are partners. Our senior, we call her, the woman that runs the 35 plants, Erin Sharp, Group President, Vice President of Manufacturing, is actually on the Innovation Center board. And we find that collaborative effort where you have everybody from National Milk and its farmer owners to processors to retailers, we happen to be both of those, is a great way to discuss those things, because we feel very strongly one of the things that we think that we can do to help ourselves and to help our industry is try to stick with science, and that isn't always as easy as you might think, particularly with the way things can get spread on the internet that may have no truth or fiction. But we find if we use that as our backbone, two things: A, we stay out of trouble because we're sticking to facts, and second of all, you build a collegial group that you can work with. And one of the reasons that Kroger hired me is because I'm a kid with a degree in dairy science who ended up in the food side of the business. And so one of my roles is to make sure that message on the dairy side gets through. And we have similar people on the meat side of the business, on the crop side of the business, that do the same kinds of things. But that's what we do. Internationally, you don't always have those. I mean, you've all seen the stories about how the fish you buy isn't the fish you think it's going to be. Well, there's a fair amount of truth in a lot of that. So whether it's labor or whether it's care, it's antibiotic use in hatcheries, those kind of things, we take a little stronger hand. We have partners that help us with that, but we don't enjoy the collaborative efforts we have here. But if you're going to buy enough shrimp to feed folks in the United States as much as they want, some of it's going to come from overseas. So we really enjoy very good relationships here. And we try as much as we possibly can to work with the farmer-owned groups or the cooperative-owned groups, because we find it's a partnership that's sustainable that way. Otherwise, we don't have the expertise to put together a sustainability program for dairies. We rely on folks like the co-ops and like you to do that for us.
Yeah. Yeah, and exactly to what Mike said, I have the pleasure of being a part of our, messed up my mic. I have the pleasure of being a part of our supply chain team, and from day one, we have always worked with suppliers that share our core values, and that includes animal care and handling and using best management practices. So this is something that isn't new, but when it comes to some of the verification and kind of that end user asking more questions, that may feel a little bit newer to you guys. But again, it's something we've been doing from day one, not just with dairy, but with all the different products that we serve. And yeah, it's, we call it kind of trust but verify. We know you guys are doing the right things, and it's just like, I like to use the metaphor, if your daughter says she's going over to friend Rachel's house, you're going to make sure she's at Rachel's house and not at her boyfriend Johnny's house, We trust. We know you guys are doing the right thing, but it's that verification piece that just supports our messaging and makes us even more confident in what we're saying.
it arms us with good information to fight the myths.
Yep.
It's really important.
So I think that kind of goes into the next question. We're talking a little bit about what are your sourcing requirements, what programs or initiatives in the industry. You know, I think you both kind of alluded and mentioned to it that you support the farm program.
Right.
Yeah. So why did you go with that industry program maybe than something else? And why do you think it's important for the farmers to feel confident in that program for a sourcing requirement?
It was the most collaborative program. It was the one program where you, thanks to innovation, you had our two senior VPs who could at the same time talk with co-op leaders and producers about what's realistic and what's practical. And I think, I mean, the farm advisory team that works on farm, for example, there's a veterinarian who's a dairy farmer from North Carolina. At least she wasn't. She's really cool, by the way. Has brown Swiss. She you know, very, very practical. And again, I look at that program and I think of my dad back in, date myself, in the 70s. If they'd come on the farm and said, we're going to document what you do, and he was in the Army and he could turn the air blue, and he probably would have. But I look at how we practiced, we were doing, at that time, what was best practice. But it wasn't necessarily documented. And so even though, I mean, I'm a guy that hates doing their taxes and files an extension every year on the 15th of April. So I understand the paperwork part. But I think it's that verification that gives us what we need to fight, because there's lots of people who don't want animal agriculture to be successful. So we have to have a tool that we feel has enough strength to it to fight back. And we think there's several that have been there for a long time, some of the other livestock, but in a short period of time, we think farm has gives us comfort we need. We're not looking for further verification, and we wish others wouldn't as well, because I think if we stand together, we can be more successful. We don't try to fight with each other. Good milk's good milk. I mean, I'd rather you buy it from Kroger, but good milk's good milk.
Yeah, similar to what Mike just said. You know, we really do rely on the National Farm Dairy Program to be our platform, you know, to ground everyone. Again, it takes everything you guys are already doing, those best management practices in sustainability and animal care, and even more things I'm not naming, and it, you know, it puts it into a usable platform that we can use to then share all of the good things that you guys are doing each and every day to further build trust in dairy, and then hopefully sell more dairy, right? That's our goal at the end of the day. So that program is very important to us.
So it sounds like a big part of that component for you guys has been that verification.
Yes.
Like it is, we know that program does have paperwork, but that is what's helping verify to you as a customer that yes, we have a system in place. We have a commitment here that we can also share with our consumers to help them feel confident in the product we're sourcing. Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah.
And
yes.
And to that, as science continues to evolve, as we learn more, I think the cool thing with the farm program is that it's been evolving as we learn more, and seeing that evolution of just that continual improvement. Again, it just adds further trust in the dairy industry and what you guys are doing each and every day.
Yeah, and a spin that you may not think about is investor relations, because Kroger's a publicly traded company. Barney was successful with his bakery and his meat shop and his groceries, so he sold stock. We've been a publicly traded company for over 100 years. So as part of that is a big issue for investors today. Yes. They want to see, what are you doing to, you know, basically stay out of the paper. I mean, to be cynical. But what are you doing to work with your supply partners? And it can be lumber. It can be the wood you use to make paper towels. But all those different things, what are you doing to try to be responsible, make sure your sourcing, your sources are responsible. And so, again, the collaborative programs with the U.S. livestock industry give us the tools we need to tell that good story. And except for you get some of those radical shareholders, quite honestly, if people are reasonable, they get it. And reasonable people are generally people that own Kroger stock. At least we like to think they're extra smart, but they're reasonable. And so it's a way for us to communicate that. It's very helpful.
So you kind of alluded to this investor group as well, but we know there's a lot of NGOs that are out there, and we know there's industry representatives. Let's be honest, there's a lot of people knocking at your door that want to talk to you. about issues, whether positive for ag, negative for ag, or even not even in agriculture, but they want to have, they want to be at the table to have that dialogue with you. When you think about that, so what type of stakeholders do you typically work with, I would say, as a company, and how do you value them, and how do you determine what's the best groups to work with to maybe make decisions on there? And when you think about that further, how does the voice of the farmer get shared up through those groups to be part of that dialogue?
Well, a good one for us, I think, if you look at a couple, first of all, you look at some of the animal welfare groups, which we view as, basically vegan advocates, and you have to talk to them, but you also recognize how far you can get. But then you get all the groups, other groups, and I know farmers work with them, and we have in several ways, like the World Wildlife Federation, who has been great as we look at making sure that the wood for all the cardboard that a grocery store has is as sustainable as it can possibly be. And so you have a lot of those kind of groups understand the reality of modern commerce and the modern world and modern convenience. And so they will work with you, and they're reasonable. You have some that you just, it's kind of like the Serenity Prayer. There's some that you just can't help, and you just do the best that you can. But for the most part, you will find investors respect the WWFs of the world. They think they're doing good work, and they understand the ones that aren't. Consumers is trickier because we all know if it's on the internet, it's true. If any of you saw that commercial they had, I think it was, I can't remember who it was for anymore, but it's about this woman that had this boyfriend who said he was a model, that, he was just the most hideous looking thing. He looked like one of the Ramones. He had long hair, is awful. And she says, well, how did you find him? I found him on the internet. I said, well, that's kind of the joke. So that continues to be something for us that we work with, and we have an outreach group, obviously, a communications group. We have a sustainability manager that works actually with Innovation Center and the other animal groups, as well as all of industry. And we also put out an annual report talking about all the different things we're doing. For example, you saw the slide on the meals we've donated in our waste initiative. That came out of our annual report. So those are the kind of things that we do. But you have to recognize there's some folks that aren't reasonable, and you have to.
So you
try not to give them.
You
talk to them. You try not to give them any credibility.
So what about the farmers? Like, where does their voice? Is there a place for the farmer in that decision-making process, or where do you get their voice to help share their concerns?
We do it several ways. At Kroger, one is, of course, when you buy from cooperatives, you're buying from a farmer-owned organization. We try to attend our milk suppliers' annual meetings. I know a lot of those dairymen from my past jobs. So you visit with them. We try to work with their trade associations directly. Again, their officers are whether they're cattlemen or whether they're dairy farmers, they're all industry people. And so we make an effort to have those communications, and we try to visit, in the case of our team, we try to make sure everybody gets on an actual farm and spend a half a day, run around the lots at least 2 or 3 times a year, because it helps them in my small team. We have the ability to do that, because you have to understand that. It's like right now, we all know the dairy industry, it's not been a fun couple of years. It's been pretty nasty. And I view part of my job is, we're looking at, wow, our cost of cheese has gone down. And I have to remind them, yes, but it's going to go back up because the price isn't sustainable. And so helping understand that economic part, I think, is very important long term, because it's no different than any business. It's no different than a Kroger's or a Culver's. If you don't make money, sooner or later you're going to say, I've had it, I'm done. And we don't need to lose our supplies.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of the role we play. Since we buy milk through cooperatives, and the main reason we do that, by the way, is for balancing, because consumers don't buy milk the same way cows make it. So it's easier for us to have someone who has powder plants or other ways to balance milk supply. So we used to have independent producers. It was just too difficult to deal with seasonality of milk, so we went to co-op supplies, because the last thing Kroger needed was a powder plant. So we let others do that for us. And I would say overall that has worked well. And as you might imagine, some are better partners than others, but overall they've done a good job for us. And we like the model. And meats, it's a little different. You tend to work with some of the larger, it depends. We have some local groups we work with, and all of our divisions have the right to work with local groups. We have local products. Okay. But our national brands, like Purdue, for example, those kind of things. Those are handled, nationally, and you don't necessarily deal with producers. However, with animal care, we try to get all those people try to get on farms, understand what's going on, so that when you can read about a program, but until you see how it works, it's hard to do it. In fact, I'm due for my farm training update. I know. I figured you were in here to catch me. That was great. I mean, I loved it. I felt like I was back at Virginia Tech taking dairy science classes. I had a great 2 days. But I think it's important that we send people through those kind of programs, and we try to do that so that they understand how they work.
Yeah, kind of jumping back to that stakeholder piece. Being a Wisconsin-based company, we work pretty closely with dairy farmers of Wisconsin to promote Wisconsin dairy. But we also work with a local animal welfare expert, and he's been a really great person that we have leaned on for some guidance, as well as other groups like USFRA, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, and the Innovation Center. Different members of our team have attended events. A couple have been hosted by the Innovation Center. And they've been really great resources to just keep us up to date on things that are going on in the industry. If something does bubble up in the news, for example, Angela is a great resource, and she'll say, hey, this is going on, and it's very valuable so that we don't get caught off guard either. But to the piece of where can farmers have a say or be a part of that discussion? And for us, it's really about ensuring that you guys are telling your story. And we have a public relations team that does a really, really great job of engaging with dairy farmers and other ag leaders to help share their story on different social media platforms that we use. But it's also very beneficial when those ag leaders already have a really good following. They're already doing media. They're on social media. They may be doing media interviews. Because then we can just elevate their presence, and it makes for a really good relationship. So if you aren't already, we would really encourage you guys to share your story. You guys are seen as very credible sources of information. You're very trustworthy. Our consumers trust you, and I think that's a really wonderful place to be to continue sharing your story.
And I would say you guys are pretty ag-friendly for the most part, but Sarah, you're pretty involved in the National Restaurant Association, which represents really the whole food service realm. Do you think it's fair to say that probably all of your friends and partners in food service want to share the positive story of ag, and so you would encourage them to go ahead and share their stories with those food service companies as well?
Absolutely. To what Angela said, the National Restaurant Association is made up of the majority of different restaurant chains, both large and small. And there's a great opportunity, at least, for us, when some of our dairy partners, or even in other proteins, if you are asked to participate in a conference as the representative, dairy farmer, say yes, because it's a great platform and a great opportunity for you to engage with industry leaders who may have decision-making capabilities within their company to just be able to share your story. So I'd encourage you to say yes to those opportunities.
Great. So we talked about this a little bit there. I mean, that's the best part. We've talked about some of these questions ahead of time, but you never know until we're here what we're fully going to get into. But you're all involved in some capacity with the dairy industry. Kroger's very involved with the Innovation Center for U.S. Dairy. They're proud supporters of the farm program, and they're part of the Dairy Sustainability Alliance as well. And Culver's has very much been a friend of the industry, and we've gotten engaged significantly, I'd say, the past year. We've been at a lot of meetings together that just randomly, it's nice to see. So what is the relationship and value for you having a partner in the dairy industry? What is that value, and what does that mean to you and your company?
Yeah, for us, a lot of it is just that collaboration piece and knowing that if we get a question or if something comes up in the news, we have somebody credible that we can turn to. I trust Angela, and there have been a couple times where I've turned to you and asked a question because we didn't know. Or just if an issue comes up, we'll say, okay, what's the science behind this? Is this legit or not? So that's been very very, very helpful. But for us, we have to remember, you guys think and talk and speak dairy every single day. We also have pork and beef and chicken and seafood. We have a lot of other categories that we also have to talk every single day. So having relationships with leaders in the dairy industry is really beneficial for us because we have to manage a lot.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, and a lot of it is just it's just people time and it's expertise. We can't be experts on everything, and so we rely on folks like Innovation Center and some of the other ag groups to help us with that. And I think one of the things that we find is you get to work with those groups, the promotion groups in particular, because they know if they sway off of science and they sway off of a fact, I mean, they're there to be the truth sayers, and so we trust them. And so we are very comfortable working with groups like Innovation Center or even the beef promotion folks for that very reason. And we need them. And in the same even in case of ours, because we're in so many states, working with some of the state dairy associations as well, they're very, very helpful to us. And we work with them on programs together. We do other things together by our divisions, depending where they're located, because they bring a resource. I mean, I'm the guy that was raised on a dairy farm at Kroger. There's plenty in the plants, but in the central office, I'm the only one who's willing to live in Cincinnati, I think. But it's, we need the expertise, and so we rely on it from all these other groups to help us, because we simply don't have the manpower to do it ourselves, and we do, it's objective coming from you.
You guys ask tough questions. I mean, there's no joke that we
Yeah.
know that, this past year, PETA's been really good on asking some questions, and I think every retail and food service company had a lot of question about poll genetics, and we spent a lot of hours on the phone
Yeah,
together.
we had a nice call on that one day.
Oh, yes, on a Friday,
Yes,
late, after
yes.
hours even.
Well, you don't know me very well. That's when I call people.
He found my cell phone number, so.
Yeah.
But it is, because it's not just, you don't just call me. I mean, usually right away, we're calling experts, academic experts.
Right.
I'm connecting you with veterinarians.
Oh, you had
connecting with
follow-up.
farmers.
We had follow-up in no time from you
Oh,
guys
yeah.
with more resources, so it was really
It
helpful.
is. It's about bringing experts to you,
Yeah.
because as you said, we are science-based, but we also understand consumer emotion and that drive as well. So how do we balance that? Because we know
Well, how do you communicate science, which isn't always very easy?
it's
so,
very tough,
yeah.
as you know. Last question for me, because I know we got some questions out here. So we know the U.S. dairy industry has a very sustainable story, and they're great on on-farm efficiency. But how do we recommend that the farmers in the room here talk about that to consumers? And how do we build credibility with their story with you? And then more importantly, I think, is how do they share those best practices with each other?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first things first, how do you build credibility with us? You have credibility with us. It's already built. We just want to help you share your story, and we want to encourage you to share your story even more than what you're doing now. But, again, being a part of your community, trying to educate healthcare providers, anybody you can to get your story out. If it's an opportunity, bring people onto your farm. It's a great educational tool that I've actually been a part of, and I've seen it completely shift people's perspectives from being, anti-dairy to very pro-dairy. So those are really great things. But, also be constant learners. Attending events like the World Dairy Expo and other conferences to continue growing your skills. That's very important, and if there's forums where you can share knowledge and expertise, continue to do that. But yeah, you guys have trust in us.
I think this is a great state to ask that question because of PDPW. I'm not just saying that because of your jacket. I think it's been a great program, and it's been around since the early 90s, I think. And that's a great forum. It doesn't matter if you milk 100 cows or 1,000 cows. To exchange information. They have a great meeting every year. It's a great resource, and there's several of those been copied, but I don't think they've met PDPW yet. Those kind of forums are useful. There isn't the dollars in extension to do those kind of things like there used to be. We rely more on experts. We rely more on salesmen, which can be okay, but again, you got to remember, it's good to have that third-party view. So I think that's part of it. I think the other thing, too, with dairy is what I call halo effect. I had a brief conversation right before we had this meeting talking about how consumers react to bad press or good press and how it can affect sales of products. And we had an opportunity working with Michigan milk producers. It started out as Milk for Flint, Michigan, after their water crisis, and Michigan Milk donated milk. We donated the processing and the packaging, and then the milk was given to the food shelters in Flint. That's turned into a continuing project. It's been very strategic. They focused on providing milk in summer when there aren't breakfast and school lunch programs for the impoverished kids, so they get their milk year-round. So when school's out, we're packaging milk with the help of Michigan Milk. And we want to repeat that model. We have 17 plants that process fluid milk. We can do that other places. And I think we're going to encourage, we already have other cooperative interests. We're very excited about that, because that's the kind of thing that can set us apart. We all know we make a great product. I'm a big believer, part of the challenge we have today is that the kids aren't exposed to drinking milk like we all were, whether we're from a farm or not when we were kids.
Yep.
It's a habit you keep. You know, two of us go through 2 gallons of milk a week. Yeah. So it's really, I think those kind of efforts, working with yourselves or others, are really important. I think that they do good for the community, and it pays you forward, it pays you back. I think and we're excited about those kind of opportunities. And so that's one example. Another thing is, anytime you get an opportunity, I know we certainly probably don't do a good enough job having farmers in our stores. And certainly, we don't arrange that. Our divisions, we have 18 different divisions at Kroger. You saw the dots on the map. A lot of the local groceries, we do that with our plant people. Our plant people actually go to stores and basically, here's what we make at this plant, and you should try this, which is it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of pride. There's no reason we couldn't do that with the milk, too. Yeah. Why don't we should have the farmers there along with the plant people. We take it right from the blade of grass into the bottle. That'd be great. So I'm getting ideas here, too. But I think that is real important that we have a product we can be nothing but proud of, and we just need to take every opportunity we can to have other people understand how good it is.
Yeah. I agree with you, Mike. And at the end of the day, I know we've talked a lot about production practices and animal care, but it's important to remind people milk is good for you. It's got 8 grams of high-quality protein. It's an excellent source of calcium and vitamin D. I mean, it's good for you. It's good for kids. It's good for everyone. So it's a great product.
Absolutely. And we started about 5 minutes late, so we still have about 10, 15 minutes for questions. So Nate, do you want to go ahead and take the mic? And we'll let him be our little mic person on here for any questions that you guys might have for these panelists. We've got one up in the front right away.
When it comes to your type of restaurant and the grocery business, it's largely a small margin. The food industry is a small margin business.
Very.
And one of the thorns in farmers' side is the use of absence claims to gain market share. Are we stuck with absence claims forever? And if we are, what are the new ones coming down the pipe?
That's a good question.
Sure, yeah, the question was about, absence claims, those free from claims. I feel like, you go into your grocery store and a lot of what you see is there's no X, Y, or Z in a product. For us, we're really trying to talk about what's actually in our food versus what's not in our food. And for us, that's a way we're going to continue to talk about.
I wish we were quite so noble, because we're not. There's when you get into there's some things that's good that food doesn't have in it, and there's a lot of things that don't matter. Like the whole GMO debate just drives me absolutely crazy. Let's raise the price of producing corn so it costs more to consumers, which makes more expensive. You don't add margin, you just add cost. So that part of it, and I don't know if we can win that one, but I think a lot of that is we let the misfacts get ahead of the facts, and we're guilty of it too. Consumers want those products. They want products without GMO wheat. We're going to give them some. I mean, if you look at the country, you think 90% of the people have celiac disease on the amount of gluten-free stuff we sell these days. It's kind of crazy. So I think the other part of that, though, is that we need to work collaboratively not only with animal agriculture, but with all of agriculture to try to push the science. Certainly in our sustainability efforts, we try to be very science-based. What's realistic, what makes sense, and some of these other areas, we need to do that as well. But at the same time, we're a grocery store, we're going to sell products. It's kind of like nut beverages. I don't call them milks because my dad would roll over in his grave if I called it milk. But my joke is, wow, look what you get for $4 a half gallon to get 1 gram of protein per cup. It's great stuff, you know. It's a lot of that, I think, is, and we've had good press. I don't know if any of you have seen much. The New York Times had a couple good articles on the non-value of all these plant beverages. And I think part of what we need to do as an industry is just, again, it's being that upfront and honest. If people want to buy something, we need to sell it. We probably need to work harder, and I think we need to try to get more press on the reality of what people think. Let's look at, and things change. Look at butterfat. I mean, I was raised with jerseys and Dodge trucks, which in the 70s mean you got beat up. I mean, and look at it today. Dodges aren't rotten anymore, and jerseys are popular. So things can change.